Shalom guys, welcome back to another episode here at YASHAV, Youth Ministry with Casa de Israel. Thank you guys for being there. If you like the content that we have on our channel, like and subscribe. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, put it in the comment section down below. So I appreciate the support you've been giving to the channel. And so we're going to continue the weekly Torah portion. This week is Torah portion EKEV. We are in the book of Deuteronomy, or the book of Devarim. So let's get started. So like I said, this week's Torah portion is Eikev and is in Deuteronomy chapter 7, verses 12 to chapter 11, verse 25. The Haftarah, or the prophets portion, is Isaiah 49, verse 14 to Isaiah 51, verse 3. And the Brit Hadashah, or New Testament portion, is Hebrews 11, verses 8 through 13. Okay, now, in our Torah reading for this week, Parashat Eikev, Moses continues his farewell address to Israel by saying, "And because you listen to these rules and keep and do them, the Lord your God will keep with you the covenant and the love he swore to your fathers." Eikev, often translated because, literally means heel, which recalls Jacob, the heel hoarder or the heel holder, who wrestled with the pain of his past to learn to bear the name of Israel, the Prince of God, or the one that wrestles with or alongside God. Okay? So, before we get started, let's do the Torah blessing. Baruch Adonai Haorah, Baruch Adonai Haorah, Leolam Ba'et, Baruch Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, Asher bahar banu mikol ha'amim, benatan lanu et Torato, Baruch Adonai noten haTorah. Bless Adonai who is blessed, bless Adonai who is now forever. Blessed are you, Adonai, God, sovereign of the universe, who has chosen us from among the peoples and has given us the Torah. Blessed are you, Adonai, giver of the Torah. Amen. So, this week's Torah portion starts the following way. Adonai, Eikev, Tishmeu, et hamishpatim, ha'ele, Ushmartem Wa'azitem Otam Washamar Adonai Elohecha Lecha et Haberit Wa'et Hased Asher Nishba La'abotecha. In English, it says the following. If you pay attention to these laws and are careful to follow them, then the Lord your God will keep his covenant of love with you, as he swore to your ancestors. Remember, the focus here, especially of the book of Deuteronomy, is remembering what has transpired and remembering why they are here. Egypt, the promise to the forefathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Okay? And so, he will love you and bless you and increase your numbers. And he will bless the fruit of your womb, the crops of your land, your grain, your wine and olive oil, the calves of your herds and the lambs of your flocks in the land swore to your ancestors to give you. You will be blessed more than any other people. None of you, your men or women, will be childless, nor will any of your livestock be without young. The Lord will keep you free from every disease, and he will not inflict you the horrible diseases you knew in Egypt, but he will inflict them on all who hate you. You must destroy all the peoples the Lord your God gives you over to you. Do not look on them with pity, and do not serve their gods, for that will be a snare to you. So Adonai is preparing the people of Israel entering the land, and making sure that when they enter this land, they enter with the right perspective. And the right perspective and the right mindset is follow me, obey my words, and do as I tell you, because I will be giving you the fruit of the land, the crops, children, prosperity, okay? And so, all of this is what the people are looking for. Israel and the other nations are seeking the ability to have this which God is promising to fulfill through Israel. So we have seen that the laws of Deuteronomy are shaped by a theological agenda, which is clear, both in chapters either side of the collection, which provide its context, and in the presentation of laws themselves. The ethics of the book are forged as this Deuteronomic theology is applied to life in the land. Its fundamental concern for right relationships among God's people, including a concern for disadvantage and protection of women's rights, even spills over into asylum laws more liberal than those of its neighbors. There is still one aspect of the teaching of the book, however, which caused enormous problems for many people today. How can a book claim to be ethical in the light of its teaching on the way Israel must deal with the Canaanites? Now, Moses, however, is concerned to define the distinctiveness of Israel not simply against a Canaanite background, but against that of all nations. So he uses the terms Amim and Goyim to reflect the basic dichotomy between Israel and the world. Both terms are used indiscriminately to describe the nations to be expelled by Yahweh from Canaan. So the whole purpose of this is to make sure that the land that God has given the people is ruled by the people, and that the image in the land is the people, and the God that is reigning over the land is Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh. Okay? Now, in the Ugaritic myth, right, because we have to understand, why is God telling the people of Israel to eliminate the Canaanites, right? Why are they going to go into the land? And there's multiple, right? There's 7 nations that I mentioned, right? And these nations not only have their own ways of worship, but they also have a relationship with Egypt, okay? So it is important to understand that Israel is something that people are looking at. And so why? What is so interesting and what is so different about these nations? Well, in the Ugaritic myth, explain nature as to satisfy man's craving for the answers to the universe, and to guarantee the regularity of the processes that result in fertility of mankind, animals, and plants. And so this is something that is not so far off from what we as humans are doing today, right? We're seeking to the ability to find the answers of the universe. We want to find fertility and maintain humankind or mankind, animals and plants, to our benefit. And so that's what their sole focus was, right? And God is telling Israel, I can give you the ability to get the answers of the universe and guarantee you regularity of the processes that result in fertility of mankind, animals, and plants. The content of the myth is conveyed through narrative full of action. The ancients were not interested in abstractions. Their thinking was concrete, and their gods are portrayed as engaging in lively and significant action. For example, when Baal, the god of fertility and life, and Mot, the god of sterility and death, fight furiously, the action is not only interesting per se, but it is significant in that the outcome determines whether the land will be fertile or sterile for a prolonged period. And so the manifestation of the land giving fruit or not giving fruit is put on the hands of the gods, and the gods dueling it out in a fight. Okay? Fertility is the main concern of the Ugaritic myth. The fertility that the ancients aspired to was within the framework of nature. They wanted each manifestation of fertility in its due season. They wanted nothing, not even blessings such as rain and crops out of season. What they dreaded was the failure of rain, crops in season. They desire the harvest of barley, wheat, tree fruits, olives, and grapes, each at its normal time. And so, Israel's decisions all take place before the nations. Okay, so all these nations are witnessing Israel defeating Egypt, right? Egypt in particular plays this role in chapter 9, verses 26 and 28, as we see that Moses recounts when they were about to get destroyed, and Moses is reminding God that the other nations are going to see, right? Because if Israel is doomed because of their sin, Egypt is going to see that God didn't fulfill its promise. It says where she is depicted as looking on in anticipation that the Exodus project will eventually flounder because of the disobedience in Israel. So Israel has to understand, hey, you are called to be different. And while you're being called to be different, the nations are watching. And they're in expectation of your failure. And your failure is a representation of God's failure because you're the image, right? Not the Asherah poles, not the pillars, you. Okay? And so, all of these addresses and laws in Deuteronomy are issued to an Israel which is consistently conscious of its enemies. This steadfast gaze at the enemies and the nations over against which Israel must and will affirm its claim is most dominant characteristics of Deuteronomy. And this is a commentary from Martin Archer. And so we will see that in the Hebrew, there is a distinction of how these things are described, right? So Goyim in Deuteronomy are nations outside of Israel that will pose a threat, and a threat in the sense of either attack or influence. Now, Amim are the people that would recognize that the laws that God gives Israel are wise and fruitful, okay? And so, in the example where in chapter 4 it says, and the nations will see you obeying these laws, and they will say, what a great nation has such just and righteous laws, and a God that is so close to them, okay? So the Amim in that example are those that are not necessarily part of Israel, but are in the midst of Israel, recognizing that Adonai is the true Elohim, and that the wisdom that he's giving and the laws that he's given are good and fruitful. And so, in chapter 7, verse 6, the epithets in particular are attached to Israel as a result of the electing love of God. Israel is now a Zegulah of Yahweh, and is called to be an Anam Kadosh. Segulah, treasure, possession, occurs 3 times in Deuteronomy. In chapter 7, verse 6, chapter 14, verse 2, and chapter 26, verse 18. And once in Exodus, chapter 19, verse 6. It was used in the world of ancient Near Eastern vassal treaties to denote most favored nations' status. And so that's Segulat, Kadosh, or Kadosh Segulat. A treasured possession is something that it was designated to those in covenant, mainly a vassal and suzerain treaty. And it was attributed to the vassal, right? So we're the vassal, he's the suzerain, okay? And so Israel is invested with royal honor and significance. Now, she's invested in honor and royal significance, not in her own right, but through association with the great king, Yahweh himself. So you associating yourself in this covenant with God makes you the image of God. So thanks to God, through you, his image will be portrayed, and you will become a royal and honorable representation, okay? Now, the Amim are the natural audience for Israel, Israel's preference. Israel as the Segulat, right, the treasure, may even be a kind of show house, right? So instead of Israel being like the spoiled brat, Israel is meant to be a show house, a model for the nations as the place where God is present in the world. If this is in mind, then Israel will be expected to behave in a way appropriate not only for a favored vassal, but for the king himself. So the phrase Am Kadosh, or holy people, used with Segulah in both chapter 7, verse 6 and 14:2, emphasizes separation rather than privilege or example. and so is less concerned with the nations looking on. Right? So it's trying to understand that Israel is called to be separated, and they are focused on being the image of God for themselves and their community, which hence will give that image to those that are outside. Okay? Now, Deuteronomy 7, verse 17 to 20 say, you may say to yourself, these nations are stronger than we are. How can we drive them out? But do not be afraid of them. Remember, well, the Lord your God did what did to Pharaoh and to all Egypt. You saw with your own eyes the great trials, the signs and wonders, the mighty hand and outstretched arm with which the Lord your God brought you out. The Lord your God will do the same to all the peoples you know fear or now fear. Moreover, the Lord your God will send the hornet among them until even the survivors who hide from you have perished. Do not be terrified by them, for the Lord your God who is among you is a great and awesome God. The Lord your God will drive out those nations before you, little by little. You will not be allowed to eliminate them all at once, or the wild animals will multiply around you. But the Lord your God will deliver them over to you, throwing them into great confusion until they are destroyed. He will give their kings into your hand, and you will wipe out their names from under the heaven. No one will be able to stand up against you. You will destroy them. The images of their gods you are to burn in fire. Do not covet the silver and gold on them, and do not take it for yourselves, or you will be ensnared by it. For it is detestable to the Lord your God. Do not bring detestable things into your house, or you, like it, will be set apart for destruction. Regard it as vile and utterly detested, for it is set apart for destruction. Now, the thing here that is labeled as set apart or regarded as vile is the word here, cherem. Right? A prescribed thing is the noun related to the verb hacharem. Doomed to destruction, objects used in idolatry were to be destroyed together with the idolaters. This verse indicates that the proscribed status of such objects was quasi-contagious. One who appropriated them for himself became proscribed like them, retaining vestiges of idolatry, and would earn Israel the same fate as the Canaanites. And so once this element was consecrated for that deity, it is an element of covenant. And so you accepting that element that's dedicated to that deity will put you in a sense into a covenant with that deity. Right? Now, we could say the deities are nothing, but in the concept that we're trying to understand is the goyim, which are outside, that could be a threat, whether influential or militarily, but the amim are watching. They're paying attention to Israel because Israel doesn't have any Asherah poles, right? They're called to burn them. No stones to worship because they are that image. They are that example that is called to apply themselves and follow God and make sure that they don't adopt anything from other nations or negotiate who they are to be assimilated. They're called to wipe out those in the land that pose a threat militarily and influential and establish God's kingdom and move on from there as examples of God and his image vividly living, just like it was in Genesis. And so here, taking objects and adopting elements of worship from those nations will then consecrate you to those nations by your action of using items of worship. It doesn't matter if you're doing it to worship Yahweh, you're connecting something that is common to something that is holy, and that is what sets Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh apart from all the other nations. Okay? Now, Hebrews 11, verse 8 through 11. By faith, Abraham, when called to go to a place he would later receive as his inheritance, obeyed and went, even though he did not know where he was going. By faith, he made his home in the promised land like a stranger in a foreign country. He lived in tents as did Isaac and Jacob, who were his heirs with him of the same promise. For he was looking forward to the city with foundations whose architect and builder is God. And by faith, even Sarah, who was past childbearing age, was enabled to bear children because she considered him faithful who had made the promise. So Hebrews here is pointing to two things. One, what Israel is being called to do is imitate Father Abraham in going into this land, into this unknown territory by faith in God above everything. And recognizing that by them doing that, they become a consecration to Adonai. And so, them being consecrated to Adonai, as those nations were going to try to be possessive of Israel if they stayed consecrated to Adonai, right? Because if they stayed consecrated to Adonai, they will be Hedem to those nations. Now, Hedem in a idolatrous worship would contaminate negatively. But now, in this case, in Joshua chapter 1, verse 17, it says that they were Hedem, right? They were consecrating towns to Adonai for the people of God. And so, you making the effort by faith in consecrating yourself to God, it's going to make you consecrated to God. And those that try to take possession of you and who you are by influencing you or going to war with you, they will face Adonai himself. And if they humble themselves, then they will recognize God's mercy and goodness. But if they fight against you, they will perish, just like God is saying you will perish if you accept their worship and you adopt their behavior. And so Abraham consecrated himself. In a way, he became Hedem to those nations. But through Yeshua, we learn that even though Abraham became Hedem by faith to his past life, so to his inheritance and to his right, he became the father of many nations. And those that embraced him were blessed and were inserted into God's kingdom. But they had to do what Abraham did, which was obey. And Israel is called to obey by faith. Faith in receiving that which you don't see, but you hear God promising you. So, that's all I got for this week. The translation of EKEV is, in a way, when you are at the heels of fulfilling something, at the edge, right? When the Torah portion opens, saying, if you are at the heels, or if you, as a consequence of obeying the laws carefully and following them with all your heart, the Lord your God will keep his covenant of love with you as he swore to your ancestors. And he will love you, bless you, and increase your numbers. Bless the fruit of your womb, the crops of your land, your grain, new wine, and olive oil, the calves of your herds, the lambs of your flock, in the land he swore to your ancestors to give you. So, what the ancients in Canaan were desiring to do, which is control nature, God is saying, if you obey me and become an image and eliminate those images that have no life and become that image that is alive since the beginning of creation, I'll be there with you. Just obey my voice and follow my commands. So, make sure you read chapter 8, 9, 10, 11, half Torah portion, Isaiah. Have a great week. If you learn something new, Baruch Hashem. If you review, Baruch Hashem is always good. Have a great week. Shavuot Tov and Shabbat Shalom. Thank you.